The forest was a place of whispers, where the wind tangled itself in the pines, and the cries of unseen creatures echoed in the stillness. Alaric Solon had sought refuge in its solitude, trading the chaos of city life for the simplicity of a small cabin nestled in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. A former wildlife biologist, Alaric had grown weary of bustling conferences and endless reports. Here, among the trees and the rivers, he felt at home. But the forest had its secrets, and one bitter morning it revealed one of its most profound. It began with a sound that didn't belong, a low, anguished growl that froze Alaric mid-step as he returned from checking his traps. His heart quickened, not with fear but with curiosity. Slinging his pack over one shoulder, he followed the sound through the dense underbrush until he saw her. A massive brown bear, her paw caught in the vicious jaws of a steel snare. Blood seeped into the snow beneath her, and her golden eyes burned with a mixture of pain and defiance. Alaric stopped in his tracks, his breath visible in the icy air. The bear growled, warning him to keep his distance, but something in her gaze held him there, something more than primal fury, an aching vulnerability that stirred something deep within him. He spoke softly, his voice trembling but steady. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The bear's growl deepened, her muscles coiled, ready to strike. Alaric knelt slowly, his hands moving to the mechanism of the trap. It was old and rusted, the kind of cruelty meant to catch and maim. His fingers fumbled as the bear snarled, but he kept murmuring calming words. Finally, with one last effort, the trap's teeth released their grip. The bear stumbled back, blood matting her fur. Alaric froze, expecting her to lash out. Instead, she stared at him for a moment that felt eternal, then limped into the trees, her massive form swallowed by the shadows. Days passed, and Alaric thought of her often, wondering if she had survived her wounds. The forest carried on as it always did, its rhythms indifferent to the lives within it. Then, just as he began to believe he'd never see her again, she returned. It was during a fierce snowstorm. Alaric was stacking firewood against the howling wind when he saw her shape emerge from the blizzard. He recognized her immediately, her sheer size, her distinctive gait, but this time she was not alone. 2 cubs clung to her side, their small bodies dwarfed by her bulk. Alaric stood still, his breath catching as the bear, whom he now silently called Kelra, locked eyes with him once more. She growled low and turned, leading her cubs back into the storm. He thought it strange, but chalked it up to her protective nature. That night, as the storm roared, a frantic scratching at his door jolted him awake. He opened it to find Kelra, her fur glistening with snow. She looked at him, then turned, clearly wanting him to follow. Without hesitation, Alaric grabbed his coat, boots, and flashlight, trailing her into the chaos of the storm. The wind lashed at his face, and the snow was blinding, but Kelra moved with purpose, never faltering. She led him to a hollow beneath a gnarled tree, where 2 children huddled together, pale and nearly frozen. Alaric's heart wrenched at the sight. A boy and a girl, no older than 10, their clothes soaked and inadequate for the brutal cold. "It's going to be okay," Alaric said, his voice firm despite the panic surging through him. He lifted the boy into his arms and guided the girl to her feet. She wavered, but Kelra nudged her gently, urging her forward. The journey back to the cabin was harrowing. Alaric's muscles burned as he trudged through the deep snow, the boy's weight growing heavier with every step. The girl clung to his side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. Kelra stayed close, her presence both comforting and commanding, her growls warning away unseen predators. When they finally reached the cabin, Alaric nearly collapsed, but the thought of the children drove him forward. Inside, the warmth of the fire wrapped around them like a blanket. Alaric worked quickly, wrapping the children in layers and offering them sips of hot tea. Through chattering teeth, the girl managed to whisper their names, Lyric and Taven, before exhaustion overcame her. Alaric tended to their frostbitten fingers, his movements careful but efficient. Kaelra stood near the door, her eyes watchful, her breaths misting in the cabin's warmth. "You saved them," Alaric murmured, looking directly at her. "You brought me to them." Kaelra huffed softly, a sound almost like agreement, then turned and disappeared into the storm once more. Word of the rescue spread quickly. Rangers reunited the children with their frantic family, who had been searching for them since the storm began. When the family tried to thank Alaric, he shook his head. "It wasn't just me," he said. "A bear led me to them." The story captured the hearts of the small mountain town, and soon it reached far beyond. Conservation groups, journalists, and nature enthusiasts were drawn to the tale of Kaelra's courage and the bond she had formed with Alaric. Over time, the community rallied around the story, creating initiatives to protect the surrounding wilderness. Alaric found himself at the center of it, speaking not just of Kaelra, but of the fragile, beautiful balance between humans and nature. Years later, when Alaric's time in the forest came to an end, the community planted a grove of trees near his cabin in his memory. They called it Solin's Haven, a sanctuary for wildlife and a place for people to reflect on the connection they shared with the natural world. Kaelra was never seen again, but her story lived on, a testament to the profound and mysterious bonds that could form between species. And in the rustling of the trees, in the quiet moments of the forest, it was as if her spirit still lingered, watching over the world she once shared with the man who dared to see her, not as a beast, but as an equal.